Do 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 do. I am so excited to be here tonight on this eve of Black History Month ending tomorrow because it's a leap year. And I'm also excited because I'm going live with one of my favorite human beings in the whole world. Janice will be joining me shortly. And tonight's conversation is going to be a very intentional conversation about how people can protect Black people in spaces, in organizations, and workplaces year long. You know, the care and the centering and protection of Black folks is not something that's limited to Black History Month. And so, hey, sis, hey. And so I am waiting for Janice to send the invitation. Yes. I want to name the fact that I am taking this call. Hi, Jay.
Hey, sis.
Hello. I was just telling people I'm taking this call from the unceded territory of Choctaw and Homa indigenous folks. And I was going to say, so I always try to level set at the beginning of every live I do, which is who am I talking to? So I'm going to give people your little bio. And then I'm going to say why we had this conversation and what are some, low-key community agreements. Okay. So, Janice, you know what? I was just about to leave with all the ratchet stuff. And then I'm like, wait, we got to
tone it down. I love your earrings, by the way. Do those say Black History Month?
No, these say Black Girl Magic. It's from the same company that makes, I buy Janice earrings. So it's from St. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I follow her on Instagram. You sent me her info.
Link on Etsy, so I should tag Sarah. So yeah, Janice is my colleague. We don't work together. We work in the same industry. Dr. Janice Gasson-Massard is an author, a podcaster, a founder, an entrepreneur. She does work directly with helping organizations embody diversity, equity, inclusion. She is a supreme educator in anti-racism and the author of a book called Decentering Whiteness in the Workplace. All right. So that is who Janice is on resume, but also Janice is the first person to invite me to go to track karaoke.
Yes, Dr. E. Dr. E said, is this the same lady that hosted the book talk? Yes.
Yes. So
for those of you who weren't able to attend, I had a book launch party in New York City, and Kina was so gracious that she came all the way from New Orleans or Baton Rouge to.
How you telling the people where I live, girl?
She came all the way from New Orleans to I got sidetracked I said New Orleans, Louisiana. She came all the way. Yes. Yes, but you also know, folks can Google where the unceded territory is that you live and figure out.
Girl, go ahead.
The area. But yes, sorry. Say all that to say, Dr. E, yes, this is the same Kina that hosted the book talk.
So, Janice is my friend. And I'm so excited because I feel like it's always great when we get to collaborate. We do this often. She and I also have a LinkedIn show. All right.
Yes.
Called JK, but no, for real. Mm-hmm. So, like, we get to have these conversations. It's always a pleasure to be able to share space with you, sis. And so I was just telling people that tonight's conversation is about how to protect Black people in organizations year long, not just Black History Month. And I want to level set. This conversation is happening and it is directed towards people who are not Black, people who are not in the African diaspora. Now, that is not to say that if you are a Black person that this conversation doesn't mean something for you, because ideally, if you aren't a Black person, if you're not a non-Black person trying to protect other Black people, then you're a Black person who's trying to be protected at work. And so some of those things, some of the language we use may be helpful to give you framework, to give you strategy. All right. So that is the intention of our conversation. With that being said, right, we are going to welcome opportunities for questions, comments, and concerns. but we reserve the right to be like, get your ass out of here if you're on some white shenanigans. All right. And all type of people be on white shenanigans, but just want to put that out there. All right. So that's the conversation. Did you want to add anything to your illustrious bio, friend?
No, I think you covered it. You hit on the most important points. And yeah, I think you got it. You're a great intro person. So you said all the things.
I think the number one strategy we want to talk about is decentering whiteness. Let's start there, right? If you're a person who is, I think I'll put this in like the caption. If you hire Black folks, if you recruit Black people, right, if you manage Black people, then this decentering whiteness is essential. So do you want to lead us in that conversation, what that means, Jay?
Yes. I think it's really important to make the distinction that you and I made. So Kina and I had this conversation with our lovely comrade Erin Kareen on her LinkedIn live, her LinkedIn live.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually made the distinction between decentering whiteness, divesting from whiteness, and decolonizing whiteness. And what we kind of the what is it called? The conclusion that we came to is that if you think of whiteness and the process of dismantling whiteness on a continuum, the first step the three of us agreed is decentering whiteness. So what does that mean? Well, like whiteness is the air that we breathe and all that we do, right? And so I think the first step is like the awareness piece. What are the ways that whiteness is centered in the things that we do and is centered in our workplace? And then how do I actively work to decenter? If whiteness is at the center of the circle, how do I actively work to bring it toward the outside of the circle? And so part of that is, you know, centering people of the global majority, and specifically I feel like Black folks. The reason I feel like Black folks should be at the very center is because when you think about who is the most severely marginalized, it's often Black folks, Black women, Black femmes, Black trans people. And so if we want to create a world that's built on equity, justice, and liberation, we have to focus on who the most marginalized people are and work to support them in order to liberate everyone. So when I think about decentering whiteness, I think about the awareness of the ways that whiteness is centered in our systems at work, and then how do we work to move whiteness away from the center and reallocate the attention to the people most marginalized.
I love that. And I think it gives an opportunity for our little meet cute, right? So part of why you and I are in community together is because I was doing what you just said, decentering whiteness. When I worked at a firm that was not my own, and I was just like creating some workshops, working on workshops. And I noticed that some of my colleagues had included work by folks like Robin DiFangelo and other people who were like not of the global majority. And I was like, what's happening here? We just can't cite like Black folks, right? We just can't do it. So I made a decision. I said, I am going to intentionally only cite Black women in my work, right? And so I don't remember exactly what the Google search was that day, but you showed up, right? You were the first hit Forbes, baby. And I was like, okay. So I like whatever the first article was, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm looking for. And then I just like went on a deep dive and just bookmarked a lot of your work. And so after that, it was like wherever I can incorporate your voice in my work at the time. I mean, I incorporate your voice now, but at that time I was just like, yes, right? And that's when I said this commitment has to be a lifelong one, because it is very easy to skip over Black folks, citationally, professionally. And that's how we became friends. And long story short, I mean, obviously we started working together, blah, 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 blah. And now we're here.
It's
right.
So funny you mentioned that, because you and I were just talking about how today I was a little frustrated because I saw an Instagram page. I don't know who's behind the page, but I assume a Black person who an Instagram page that has a large following, and they supposedly center Blackness, but they like reposted a video of Robin DiAngelo, and the video was like Robin DiAngelo basically saying, like how for many Black people, or for many people of the global majority, we don't have teachers that look like us. And it's like, duh, Black folks have been saying that since the dawn of time, right? But it was like, I was reading the comments and people were like, yes, go ahead, Robin, her book is so good. And I just was like so annoyed, because I was like, here we have a space that my assumption is it was created to center Black people, because the page is like a celebration of a well-known Black holiday, right? And so you have this page that centers Black people, I assume, but it's like, why are you centering Robin DiAngelo, who's not saying anything novel or new, who is just regurgitating what she's heard from Black folks she's been around, Black ancestors. And so I think it's so easy. I just say all that to say it's so easy to want to commit to this work, but to default back to whiteness. And I think whiteness for everyone is the default. And it's easy to be like, I want to be, part of this. I know Monique Melton talks about this a lot, about how folks flock to her page. I remember I did an interview with her in May of 2020, before George Floyd, but after Ahmaud Arbery was killed. I did an interview with her. I don't remember how many followers she had, but I remember it wasn't, what she has now. Let's say maybe like 12,000 followers. Now she has maybe 200,000 or 300,000 followers. And she always talks about how people flock to her page to extract from her, extract knowledge, extract whatever it is. And then when they got bored of it or tired of it, it was like, okay, I don't want to invest in you anymore. Even though I recognize that this work is important, I no longer want to invest. I want to default back to my whiteness. And so I just say all that to say it's so easy for us to, even folks of the global majority, even Black folks, for us to default back into whiteness. The amount of people that were like trying to politely drag me for critiquing Beyonce's new hair care line. I'm a Beyonce fan. I love Beyonce's music. However, I think that Beyonce should have created a hair care line specifically for Black folks. That's what I think. And it's okay for me to say that, right? But I'm sorry?
I said, show is. I just had to be your amen
corner. So like I say all that to say, like, it's so easy for us to, like, even in who we decide to defend, we fall back into our white defaults, right? And we want to, anti-Blackness is so easy to sort of, it's just like a habit for us. So I think it's like recognizing the ways that we default to whiteness. And it's hard because as Black folks, we don't we don't like think about it, because it's like, I can't be racist. Like, there's still a lack of understanding that Black folks, can promote and propel white supremacist culture, whiteness, and anti-Blackness. There's this thing like, it's only white people, right, that do these things. And so I don't think many of us take the time to interrogate our own selves and hold ourselves accountable. And I think we've seen that a lot during Black History Month, right? Where it's like a lot of, like you say, white shenanigans.
Mm-hmm. So in practical means, right? Because I want to make sure that we always bring it back to the kitchen table. Decentering whiteness means that you're having to look outside of white identity and white culture and white norms to think about how you make decisions, right? To think about, and those decisions could be hiring, right? And you expanded on a lot too. Like, if you're looking to hire within your circle, right? And if you are a person who's racialized as white, right, or someone who's racialized as non-Black, right, you might recognize if I'm pulling directly from my own personal network, right? And to be fair, right, we have the statistics that say that everybody is more likely
Mm-hmm.
to have a personal network with people who look like them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's just white people, right? That's all types. But if you are the person who's responsible for hiring,
Mm-hmm.
and you are, if you're drawing, if you're recruiting from your sphere of influence or the people you know, then 9 times out of 10, the people you know all look like you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is by like the practical component of decentering whiteness.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's funny that like in the book I talked about this, like how I did a workshop for a company and the CEO, who's not a white person, shocked me a little bit at that time. This was maybe 3 years ago. He shocked me a little bit because he was saying they have an issue, a diversity issue, right? Essentially, they hire a lot of white people and they don't have a lot of non-white people working there. And so one of the things, like in real time, I was like consulting with him because he came to the workshop, and I told him that, or I asked him, do you all have a referral hiring program? And he said, absolutely. We use it all the time. And I said, well, if you're telling me that your issue is that you hire too many white folks, or, you can't find underrepresented candidates, then you should think about doing away with that referral hiring system. Because just as you said, as a white person, I'm more likely to know other white people on LinkedIn. As a white person, I'm more likely to be connected with other white people. And if you tell me, Bob, to go try to refer someone in my network, it's going to be someone that looks like me, that thinks like me, that. And so he said to me, he cut me off mid workshop and he said, I can tell you right now, Janice, we're not going to stop using the referral hiring program. And I was like, okay, he kind of stunned me in the middle of the workshop. So I was like, okay, like, because it was like one of those things where you feel scolded by a parent. It's like, okay, I don't know why you hired me then if I'm giving you advice and you're like, there's research to back up what I'm saying, but you're going to keep doing your own thing.
He said he sent you
In the middle of the workshop, in the middle of a 200-person workshop. And I was like, okay, let's move on to, and so like, it's so easy for,
waited until after
right,
that.
you could have like whispered to me, like, okay, this is what, but I was like, you know what? It's your own, you do what you want. You could hire me because you recognize I have some sort of knowledge about this. And you don't have to follow my advice. You could, do what you want to do. That's your prerogative, right? Do what you want to. Don't come crying back to me when things get worse, and I'll still like bring you in and say, come here, baby. I told you so. I'll still bring you in, but like, it's so easy in the hiring process in the workplace just for all of us to default to whiteness, even non-white people, because it's not just white folks that default to whiteness. I might be less likely to want to hire someone with an afro because me as a black person, I don't feel like afros are appropriate, or I don't feel like they're professional, right? And so like we all default to whiteness. So the first part of that continuum that we talked about, decentering, divesting, and decolonizing, is like the awareness. What are the ways that I center whiteness in my own life? And it's hard. It's really, 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 really hard to think about that and to have that conversation with yourself. It's difficult, it's messy, it's traumatizing, because it's a lot of it is things we heard as children that we just internalized, that we never really dealt with. It wasn't until recently that I like sat back and interrogated why I never wanted to go to an HBCU. And my dad, as many HBCUs as my dad taught at, I could have gone for free, but I just had this idea of like white institutions are better, white ice is always colder. And so I think we have to really be intentional about interrogating our own motives and why we do the things that we do.
Yeah. Let's move on to, since you started us with that decentering, divesting, and decolonizing, let me add like the divesting part, right? Because there's some overlaps there, right? So when we think about divesting, I'll just start by saying, like, when Janice and I are talking about whiteness, right? There's a way to talk about whiteness where we're like, people think automatically like people who are white, but that's not what we're referring to. We're talking about a system, right? That prioritizes Eurocentric and prioritizes and values Eurocentrism. So all types of people can be a part of that project, right? So that's for people who, because sometimes I assume that everyone who's on this call is people who learn from us already, but it could be new people here who don't know that. So we're not necessarily talking about white people. We're talking about all people who subscribe to that system, right?
Yes.
So I'll just say, like, I started this platform, Divesting from Whiteness, because in 2016, I started my own personal journey to divest from whiteness. So people might be thinking, like, what does that mean? Like, because Kina, you weren't a white person. No, I wasn't, right? I never was, right? I'm not even ambiguously, like, not, you know, I'm not racially ambiguous.
Wait,
but,
did you do your ancestry? You don't have any white ancestry?
Girl, why you, this the second time?
I
now you
know, you like, why am I putting family back? I'm just curious. Curious.
Look, 92% African.
Okay. So you in there.
People have questions. I got it tatted. Not quite on my chest, but still.
You got you in there. You
and for the longest time, you're gonna be
I know, let me stop putting family business out.
Live talking about how quirky I am, that I didn't have any of the major colonizer blood. And then, you know, Ancestry be updating stuff. And so, like, last year, like, sometime, like, 1% England showed up. And I was like...
Right? Like...
Because...
England, girl, let me find out you part colonized.
Don't do it. It don't even count. It don't count. That 1%, it don't count. It don't count.
I know, right?
I was riding with the whole, like, I'm 2% Irish, 2% Scottish. You get what I'm saying? But then that 1%...
we could do Irish. We could do a little Irish.
And I'm like, okay, I can do that. But then that 1% England, I was like, side eye. It don't count. It don't count. All right. But I say all that to say that I started that personal choice, and so that personal journey. So when I think about divesting from whiteness, I'm talking about no longer subscribing to a worldview, right? No longer using whiteness as a way to see myself and see other people, like a scoring card, like a rubric of analysis. If you want to know who's professional at work, if you want to know what hair is good, if you want to know, right, all of those things growing up, it's like you made these major investments in seeming as close to white as possible. So divesting from whiteness says, I no longer want to use that as my scorecard. I'm no longer investing my energy, my time, my resources, right? I want to be really careful. I don't want to come for anybody who permanently relaxes their hair. I know hair is a big deal for you too. You do a lot of work around that and the professional construct of hair, you know? But like the amounts of money that people spend to chemically relax their hair, not necessarily because they just love their hair chemically relaxed, right? But because that's what they had to do to seem professional, to seem tidy. You see what I'm saying? So divesting is saying, I'm no longer going to make active investments in things that reflect whiteness back to other people and reflect whiteness back to me. And that's a lifelong process, right? Because I can remember my whole life, even though no one ever said to me, you should be white, right? But it's your parents getting on the phone and you just know they're using a white people voice. Usually when they were talking to a bill collector.
Yeah.
You know? It's people telling you in really like low key, but sometimes high key ways that everything about you need to minimize so that you can make it out in the world. Right? So for people who, again, are hiring Black people, manage Black people, those kind of things, you have to recognize what are those informal ways in which people are being told that they're not enough, right? So this can be something like as simple as what holidays get celebrated or acknowledged, right? I mean, I hate to think of it, but Janice, I am pretty sure that somebody went to work this month and not Nan was Black History Month acknowledged in any way. But then next week, everybody gonna be on some big old Women History Month energy.
Girl, I already see it.
Right?
I already see it.
Or I think you made a post about this on LinkedIn. Like, y'all know y'all could say Black, right? Like, people even struggle with that, right? Which that should be the third thing. That's a side note. Okay, third thing before we get to decentering is say Black.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to protect Black people at work, just say Black. And you know, in my life, I've been a lot of variations of Keena Reed, but all of those variations was always weary of people who whispered the word Black.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Whisper, yell.
Mm-hmm.
Black people over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been like, that's a pretty good indication that I shouldn't F with you because you can't even say Black.
Exactly.
Why do you think people are challenged by it?
I think people think Black is offensive because to them, Black is somehow lesser than. So like your unconscious bias is showing because there's nothing wrong with Black, you know, in the 60s, the Black Power movement, a lot of folks were aligning themselves with the term Black, right? We're not colored, we're not, you know, African American, we are Black. And so I think that there's like, people think that there's somehow a negative connotation, but I actually find it offensive when people lump us all together. I was watching a YouTube video where they were talking about, you know, that woman, excuse me, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, I'm sorry, who does the sprinkle. I don't watch her stuff because I'm not on TikTok as much.
Now, Janice, you know my not millennial ass don't know sprinkle.
Well, there's a woman, she's not a dating coach. She calls herself a financial coach, but she provides women a lot of like advice on dating, you know, hypergamy, how to find a rich man, right? And I've seen her clips on Instagram, but I don't, you know, follow her on TikTok. But there was a white content creator on TikTok who was critiquing her feminist stance or whatever, and she was saying this is why she's not a feminist or something like that. And she said women of color when she was describing her movement that she's created. And I'm like, she's Black. She's not a woman of color. She's a Black woman and it's her movement. And so I think that we erase Black women, we erase Black people when we lump us all together. It's okay to say that's an Indian person, that is a Guyanese person, that is a Haitian person, this is a Black American person. It's okay to say those things, but somehow people feel like it's offensive. And I think that internally people feel like Black is a bad thing. And that's why they whisper Black. And that's why your podcast, Please Say Black, is so necessary, because the first part is being nuanced and specific in your language. And, you know, like that's how we're going to get to, I feel like justice and liberation, part of that is being specific. What is it that Black women specifically need? Not Black people. What is it that Black Americans specifically need? Not folks like me, children of immigrants, like what specifically? And it's okay to be, you know, for that specificity to be there. I think that's also part of decentering whiteness, is being specific.
Yeah, be specific. And here's the thing, you know, when the term African American gets kind of strategically put out there, it's Jesse Jackson is one of the people who's being strategic about using it. And at that time, he's like, well, we just want people to understand that Black folks here in the United States have ties to a larger place. So the intention was really great, right? Even the term, when POC, people of color, women of color, was created, the intention was really great, right? Which is like, we want Black women's issues to be heard in various spaces. And so people are going to listen when they realize that they're connected to other people. So the intention is good, but now the impact is different.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both teach people all the time, intent and impact are the same thing. I feel mad disrespected when people call me a woman of color.
Mm-hmm.
And where I am, you know,
yeah,
just how I you know, check people on
or
that.
like I'm a woman of color coach, and I'm like, okay, I want a Black. And it's okay for me to say that, and for me to say, like, I think that there's things that maybe for you as a woman of color, as a non-Black woman of color, I'm not going to understand, right? As a Black woman, right? So it's okay for you to be like, you know, I I work with Asian American and Pacific Islander
Yeah.
clients. And I actually prefer when people, and not like, oh, I'm a BIPOC coach. And it's like, what does that mean? Who do you
Who
specifically
are you
like?
talking
Yeah,
to?
and I get it because you want to be a generalist versus, you know, and this goes back to the Beyonce conversation. Beyonce wants to make money. She's a capitalist. We know this. I love our billionaire capitalist queen. So why would she limit her customers and make a product for Black people when she can make it for everybody and make all the money? But for somebody who talks so loudly and proudly about how proud she is of her baby's afro and how proud she is of
Her husband has.
right, right. You love, you know, all of these things. I just would have expected her, of all people, to create a product specifically for Black hair. But a lot of folks don't want to be specific, right? Because specificity or creating something specifically for a population or doing something specifically, even within the DEI space, a lot of folks say, I'm not going to do race, or I'm not going to focus on Black people because that's going to limit my funds. That's gonna pigeonhole me into being like the coach of Black people or the coach of anti-racism. I want to be a generalist. I want to do it all. But in actuality, and Dr. Raquel Martin, who some of you may follow on Instagram and TikTok, she said this. She's like, my practice and the work I do is focused on Black people.
Mm.
And I feel like I'm an excellent therapist because I focus on Black folks. I'm not a therapist for all. And I appreciate that. And I think that that's an important part of decentering whiteness, is figuring out what specific marginalized populations actually need. And you're not going to figure that out by lumping everyone together and saying, this is for BIPOCs, right? I hate that term, but you know, it's just like, I'm a BIPOC coach. What does that mean? Do you know what my specific needs as a Black woman are?
Well,
Like,
and even if you think about even and in more and more people, as more and more people become part out again, if we're drawing people outside of the margins and inviting everyone to the center stage, right? We have our Asian kinfolk who are like, listen, East Asian, very different than Southeast Asian. Get it straight.
mm-hmm.
Very Pacific Islander, get it straight. And people have a right to, right? People have a right to say, don't try to flatten the experience of people in this part of the what you call it, especially because if we're talking about people of the global majority, people of the global south, that's the thing that often happens, whereas
Mm-hmm.
other people get to have those distinctions,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I also think it's important, right, while we're talking about like what are those things that people can do to protect Black folks all year long, that specificity is necessary because it combats the violence of color blindness.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can't help but to be a smart ass. I mean, I don't know if you know, but they fixed racism, girl, about 4 years ago.
Oh,
Like, I don't
girl,
even
yeah,
know.
I remember that. I remember hearing that they
Yeah,
fixed it. Yeah.
you just, I don't know what we're doing actually. You know, we just making up shit. And so, color blindness is still a thing. I would like literally, oh, girl, you saw it. Love is Blind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I caught up. I
I'm
caught up.
I'm still on episode 3.
Oh.
But the woman who was like, I just see him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, how did she, like, did she say he's not Black? Or I don't even know, but she's like, color doesn't even matter to me.
I don't want to like say more because I don't want to give spoilers because you're based on the episode that you're
Yeah,
on.
I finished.
But it's like, but it does matter. Like for you to be like, it doesn't matter. I see whether you're green, blue, red, purple. It's like, but it does matter. And okay, this is a very, very small spoiler. Very small.
Spoiler alert, if you watch Love is Blind.
Spoiler alert, if you watch Love is Blind, there was a scene where you won't know who you will know later, but there's an interracial couple in Love is Blind, and I think there were friends or the family members. No, it was one of the other contestants was like talking about how like when you're a Black person dating a white person, how are you going to raise your kids? There's things that you have to think about, right? And I think that it's cute to be colorblind and not see color, but when you're raising a Black child, or a child that is coded as Black, right? Even though they're biracial, they're coded, they could either be coded as Black or coded as Logic, right? No shade to Logic. Right. I just found out that Logic is like a fourth Black. I thought he was biracial, but he's like,
he was.
No, I guess his father is mixed or is biracial and his mom is Black. I had no idea. I thought that man was biracial, but like if you're a person who's coded as Black, you're a non-Black mother raising a Black child, there's things you have to talk about. It doesn't matter if you don't see color, blah, blah, blah. The world sees color. That's the fact of the matter. So like you could be like, there was this man who was advocating for the abolition of the census, or the race question on the census, right? There's this whole movement to like abolish race on the census, because it's like race shouldn't matter. We're colorblind, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, bro, I feel you. We want to live in a world where we're colorblind, but the fact of the matter is, if I see you and you're coded, I code you as Black, I'm gonna treat you as such.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you think, what you think you are, and that's why I think it's important to gatekeep Blackness. That's a whole nother conversation. I know, like, let me stop. But I don't even remember what the point of what I was saying.
No, so I was just saying, we were just talking about that specificity, and I said it combats colorblindness. And instead of being colorblind, we need to be colorful.
Yes. Yes. I love that you pinned Dr. E's comment, because that had me rolling. It does sound like some kind of virus, like BIPOC.
All right.
BIPCO.
Shout out to the amazing. First of all, I've been saying Aaron Kareen's name wrong this whole time. Ain't nobody check me.
I thought it was Aaron Kareen, but I asked her, I think. Yeah. I sent her a voice note.
Yeah.
A while ago, and I said, "Is it Kareen?" And she said, "It's Kareen." I was like, "Girl."
Yeah. I know. So, but the decolonizing part, right, is when you decolonize, what you're doing is you're replacing those values and those norms that whiteness has taught you with those ancestral and indigenous values and norms. So, I love to do this. This is one of my favorite things to do. Is I love telling people I'm time fluid. Listen, linear time is a construction of white folks. Facts. I could just the simple way I could break it down to you is, when white people got on boats, Europeans got on boats and went all over the global South, and they were like, "You want to do business with us? Here's this watch. Here's this clock." That's it. That's the story. Like if you want to do global commerce, right? So I regularly tell people I come from people who use the sun and the stars to mark time, mark the season, right? When did you get there? When Mama and them said. When did you leave? When Mama and them left. Like, you get what I'm saying? Now, and the role that linear time has in creating like shared meaning and efficiency, I'll give you that. But what I say is, I embrace time fluidity, meaning I recognize that people have different orientations towards time, and I should assume that everyone has the same one that I do, right? Especially when we consider things like time poverty, right? So time poverty is something that I love to educate folks on, which is, it's the amount of disposable time people have. All right. Now, because I know you very well, friend, and for some people, this is a new concept, right? The question is, in the United States, the continental United States at that, who do you think experiences the most time poverty? Any guesses? Want to fill in the blank, Jay?
Of course, black folks.
Yes. And more specifically, Black women, right, have the least amount of disposable time, because we work, we take care of kids, we take care of Big Mama and them. And
we take care of everyone.
We go volunteer down at the church. Then we serve on the usher board. All of those things, right? I found this out last year, and I never say this word correctly, but it's the word for when people give money to foundations and stuff, charity. It starts with P.
It starts with P? Oh, Philanthropy.
Yes. I don't know why I can't say the word.
It's like confusing because it's like, why is it a PH and not a
It's the sound at the end that messes me up.
philanthropy? Philanthropy. I
Yeah.
feel like it's a confusing. Why do we have PH for some and F for others? It doesn't make sense. God bless those who are English is not their first language because it is so confusing.
Yeah. But I said it to say Black people give more than anybody else and have the least amount of disposable income.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I
Y'all
thought
know
so.
that. I didn't make that up.
No, I thought that was so interesting. I saw a stat about that. When you look at who gives the most, charitable donations, it's Black people, but we have the least amount of money. That blew my mind. I was like,
All right.
that's so interesting.
So I say all of that to say that because Black women have the least amount of disposable time,
Mm-hmm.
then embracing time fluidity is helpful in the sense that it helps people understand that, hey, Sheila may be coming in at a different time or she might be clocking out at different times, but that's also because Sheila has more things to maneuver in her daily life, right? All right, so other indigenous values and norms that may be helpful for people to consider at work other than being time fluid. Do you have any thoughts before we go into Q&A, Janice?
Yes, I actually wrote down because I wanted to stay on topic. So, like, I don't know. One thing that, like, I think is really important is to, it sounds really oversimplistic, but it's to pay Black folks, because I see far too often people who say that they're committed to equity, justice, and liberation, but then they want you to work for free. You and I have had this conversation, and it happened to me this Black History Month. I actually told Dr. E knows about one, which wasn't like a, hey, we want you to work for free, but it was like, the amount that you're paying me is just not aligned with, and then you're asking me to do all these things, right? And so I've had, interestingly enough, folks of the global majority, non-Black folks of the global majority, reach out to me to do like a book talk, right? But then they're like, send me all the pages of your book, or do this or do that. And it's like, but you're committed to equity, justice, and liberation, but you studied Black feminist, and like, you did all these things and you say all these things, but like, you don't want to pay me or compensate me for my labor. So I think that if you are really committed to this work, you should find ways to bring Black people in for their knowledge, skills, and expertise, not just their DEI expertise, whatever their expertise is, and pay them. Because we live in a world where, unfortunately, we have to sell our, it sounds so sleazy to say that, sell our services. We have to sell our knowledge for money, because that's the world that we live in. And I don't want to do this work forever, period. I don't want to do this work, I have to charge to do this work, because it just feels weird. But we live in a world where we need money. And so I think that if you're committed to this work, you should really interrogate the ways that you actually compensate Black people for their labor. Because I can count so many instances of people that say that they're for equity, justice, and liberation, but they want me to come to speak to their company for free during Black History Month.
I know it'd be
Like, are you okay?
on top of atrocity.
Like, are y'all okay? In the words of Kimberly and Foster, are y'all okay? Like, so I think that compensating people for their expertise, their time, their energy, their labor is so important, especially because I would say Black folks' expertise is typically erased, ignored, underfunded, stolen from. And so I think it's important to do that. And then I also think a question that no one wants to ask is, what are you willing to give up, or what are you willing to lose? And it's a really, really hard question to answer, because none of us want to give up our cushy life. We don't want to lose anything. But what are you willing to lose? Because in order to decenter whiteness, you have to lose and shed parts of, things that you may not want to lose. You might not be able to take advantage of an opportunity, because the only reason I got this job is because of, I know Chuck and Bill and Bob, and I'm white, but I know that this Black person is actually better qualified, but they don't even get the opportunity because they weren't able to take this unpaid internship, and they don't have the right connections and the right network. So what are you like actually willing to give up? And I think that that's a question none of us wants to answer, because we don't want to give things up, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to suffer in this life. I want a good life. But what are you willing to actually give up? Because decentering whiteness, divesting from whiteness, and decolonizing whiteness requires us to shed and requires us to give things up. So what are you willing to lose? And be honest with yourself, right? Because for a lot of us, it's like, I'm not willing to lose anything.
I mean, bars. Like, you came in here so bar heavy, requires us to shed. I ain't never heard you say that, sis. Down. Listen, there's two more things I want to add to this list, and then I'm going to see if people have questions for us. And I'm going to try to go around it, because I don't believe in shitting on Black people, especially. Mm-hmm. But mm-hmm. I also want to. So again, this conversation is, how do you protect Black people in organizations? How do you protect Black people at work? And so I'm going to add to this list, get you more than one Black friend. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is why. Because, this is like, I had a live conversation yesterday with the amazing Tina Strong, my friend Tina Strong. And one of the things I had to say out loud was, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been a safe friend for her. Right? Because that's when I was in my I'm a magical unicorn bag. I was like, look, I'm getting money. Mm-hmm. I'm a professor, all that stuff. And I have managed to pull myself up from the bootstraps. Why can't the other Negroes do it? Okay. So that was my energy. I'm not proud of it, but that's just that look.
Mine too. I can't, I'm not even going to hold you. That was my energy.
That was my journey. Saying like, why are they so ratchet? Which is why I love the return, right, of that, recognizing all of it's good, even the ratchet stuff, right? So if you had said to me 10 years ago, well, Kina, I mean, why is Janice wearing her hair in those, what do you call them, locks? I'm like, I don't know. Why is she? I agree, Karen. That is not a look for the office. And then Karen can take that information and just run wild with it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people like, as long as I got that one Black person that I can listen to, talk to, bounce ideas off of, I understand the whole, no. You and I are friends, and we have a lot of value alignment, but we don't always agree on stuff. There have been some times where I'm like, sis, why are you doing it like that? You get what I'm saying? So that's the thing. You can't just listen to one Black person and be like, okay, we understand the entirety of the African diaspora, right?
Yeah.
And I'd love to remind people that people are always like, we're looking for a diverse audience. Get 100 Black people in a room, and guess what? You got a diverse audience.
Yeah.
Those people may or may not be the descendants of enslaved folks. Some of those people may be first generation. Some of those people may be trilingual. Some of those people may be disabled. Some of those people may be queer. Some of those people may be trans. Like, people always like flatten us and not recognize there's diversity in the diaspora. You get what I'm saying? So that's something else. Like, if you are making calls, if you are a change agent, if you lead systems change at work, whatever that is, and you're constantly relying on the voice of one singular Black person to help you understand or inform your practice, then you're probably doing a disservice.
And that one singular Black person, exactly like you said, could have been Kina or Janice 10 years ago, right? Because I saw somebody's post on LinkedIn talked about, it was, I think Lola Bakari had a post on LinkedIn, I think, where she basically said, all these aspiring allies, right? If you do something problematic, and just because one Black person tells you it's okay, doesn't mean that that's actually okay. Because it could be a Candace Owens telling you that that's okay. And so I think what you said is so important, of having a community of Black people that you can kind of check in with, because it's not enough to be like, oh, I have this one Black friend, because that one Black friend could be a, what's that football player that was trying to run for president?
Or
Forget his
Walker,
Herschel,
somebody.
yeah, could be a Herschel Walker. so
No one
so it's like,
heard from that Negro since then.
yeah, since the child, since the lady came out with the receipts for the child, we have not, that's a good point, we have not heard about him
Ito didn't heard about him.
since his son started talking. But like, I think also another thing to think about is like, what are the ways, excuse me, that me as a person of power and privilege, what can I do to, how can I support this person with the resources that I tangibly have? Not just money, but like, who can I introduce this person to? As many people as I like, I think about it sometimes because I love to like be the, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell talks about like connectors in one of his books. And I feel like I love to connect people with other people. I love to network with people and say, oh, Kina, you need this? I know this person. Oh, you need this? I need this. Are you like, how can you be a connector? How can you look at what it is that someone needs, right? How do they want to be developed? Who do you know in your network that can help them or provide that for them? And I think that the people that have helped me the most and done that for me the most, hands down, are Black women. But I think that that's an opportunity for white folks or people who are non-Black who want to amplify a Black person in the workplace. I think that's a really great opportunity to think about, what are the ways that I have, maybe I have influence privilege. Maybe I'm a person that, although I don't have a lot of power in this way, people are influenced by me, right? How can I use my influence to advocate for that Black person? And so I think that that's an important question to think about and to ask, because even in mentorship and sponsorship relationships, they can get like white saviory, right? It can be like, oh, I'm helping this poor person, this poor Black girl who just, came off this, so it's like, what are the ways that I can actually use the tools and the power that I have to reallocate and give back to this person or help this person on this journey, right? And I think like I always talk about making introductions on LinkedIn. I always am willing to, people that I don't even know that well have said, hey, you're connected with this person. Can you introduce me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And that introduction could turn into a job opportunity, right? And so it's like, what are the ways that you can be an advocate for your Black colleagues and coworkers and the people in your, in your community? So I think that that's important to think about. It's not just giving money is important, but like donating indiscriminately to organizations doesn't directly impact that Black person that you work with. So
The more you talk, the more I'm like adding to the list, and I need to stop. So I'm just gonna do two more, and then we're gonna do QA for real.
okay.
I think it kind of goes back to something you said earlier about it's okay to say Black. Specificity is always great. Um, I think another thing that people can start doing is creating specific processes and policies that center Black people and the Black folks who are most impacted because of societal disenfranchisement. And oftentimes, and that is Black women and femmes. And so when I say to people, create policy with Black women in mind, the most impacted people in mind, people are like, well, what about everybody else? What about is a all right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's a great opportunity for you to remind people about the power of the curb cut, mm-hmm. right? So let's just like give that a quick, just a quick sounding on that for people.
Yeah. So like for people who are not familiar, the curb cut is basically when you're walking on a sidewalk, at least here in the US, and I'm assuming maybe in other places, here in the US, when you're on a sidewalk, the sidewalk has to have areas that lead into the street, right? And it was initially created for people in wheelchairs so that they could easily transition from the sidewalk into the street. But what ended up happening was that an intervention created for that specific marginalized population ends up benefiting other people, right? If you're a parent with a stroller, the curb cut helps you. If you're riding a bike, the curb cut helps you easily transition into the street. If you're roller skating or riding skateboarding, it helps you, right? And so I think that what you said is so spot on, is that if we create policies in the workplace with the most marginalized people in mind, everybody else benefits, right? If we in a meeting are like, we're going to turn on the closed captioning because we have hard of hearing employees or hard of hearing clients, that helps me too, right? I love closed captioning. And the number of videos on Instagram that don't have closed captioning, that have no captions, from like creators or this or that. Like I'll be scrolling on my explore page and I'm like, oh, I can't watch this video, right? Because I'm in the post office right now and I don't want everyone to hear what I'm listening to, right? It benefits me even though I'm not deaf, I'm not hard of hearing. And so when you create interventions with the most marginalized people in mind, everyone else benefits.
Yeah. Word. All right. And last but not least, this is a simple one. Just ask Black people what they need. I know it's so impossible, but go into those spaces, those employee resource groups, right? Actually just ask, hey, what are the things that work here? What are the things that aren't? All right. Lead with curiosity.
And I think what's so important is to like also parse out the data, because I see too often in companies when they're trying to get feedback from employees, it's like, this is what our white employees say, this is what our non-white employees say. And it's like, it goes back to the point we were making about specificity. Lumping everyone together and without like disaggregating the data is not going to tell you what the specific needs of your Black employees are. So you should be very nuanced with your, analysis, and even looking at if there are differences between Black women and Black men, if you have Black trans folks in your workplace, if there's differences among the different, looking at things through an intersectional lens is so important. And so I think that the specificity is really important, because there's so many companies that have like BIPOC ERGs. And it's like, okay, it's good to get the feedback from your BIPOC employees, but what are your Black employees specifically saying?
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions that they feel like they would like to ask in the chat? Feel free. We're so glad to have so many people join us. This is going to be available for replay so that people can come back, maybe take notes. But while we're waiting for questions, I feel like, what am I doing? Why can't I see the chat anymore?
That's what it used to do to me. I can see it now.
Okay.
Hi, Angel. I saw a Dr. Angel left a heart,
Okay.
a black heart. I was laughing because Amber said, oh no, Herschel. But D Wolf said he took his silver badge and dipped. Is that about Herschel?
Yeah.
What's silver badge?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe whoever said that can tell us in the chat.
Yeah. Wait,
But
what silver badge are you talking about?
his bag of silver and rode out into the sunset. Waiting to see if people have questions. If I'm saying this for people who are watching live, but people on the replay, part of how you can also protect your Black employees is recognizing what anti-Blackness is. All right. So with that in mind, a little badge he'd hold up and say he was a sheriff. Poor Herschel. With that in mind, I'm teaching a workshop Saturday, right after Black History Month.
Yes, but we're still in Black Women's History Week.
Yes, Black History Month. But it's to see if people still about it, right? Because it's all fun and games, BHM, but can you like this life out? Like, can you do it for real?
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage people to go into the link in my bio to find that. I want to encourage people, take it. Janice, I usually have a copy of your book. Let me see. It's never too far away from my computer.
Really? And
I'll
I
be
don't
trying.
have it where I am. I have
Yes.
it downstairs.
So make sure people get a copy of Decentering Whiteness at work. Have it.
Yes.
I tell people that they should have 2 copies at all times.
Yeah.
You should have one you reading and the one you put on your desk in case people want to act a fool.
Exactly. Put
Ooh.
at your desk is the best gift, or get it for someone, because then if you want to open up the conversation about decentering whiteness, you don't have to do it yourself, because people are nosy. I'm nosy. When I walk into someone's residence or their domicile, I always look at their, if they have a bookshelf, I always look at their bookshelf.
Yeah.
Because I'm nosy. I want to see what you're reading.
Yeah.
So I would be like, wait, what is this? But if you have it as the only book on your desk, that's
Yeah.
like decentering whiteness.
That is giving. You can try it if you want to.
Right?
Right.
It's like, I'm not even going to ask about this, right? The other thing I do, if I want to be slick, I read it on a plane, right? And nobody so far has asked me like, "Oh, what are you reading?" But sometimes I don't want that smoke, because it's like,
wait, why were you trying to tell people buy your book as a shield?
right? No, I'm saying for people who are scared to broach the conversation or to open up like the conversation, it's a great conversation starter, because it's like, decentering whiteness, what does that mean? It's like, oh, you want to talk about whiteness.
But I actually recommend people using your book as a shield, though. Like, for real. Like, you need to be selling those mugs. That's some legit merch.
Yeah.
Imagine people walking into what they know is going to be a heated meeting. You know what I'm saying? And just come in with that mug, and people are going to, never mind, I'm going to be real careful how I talk.
Right?
You got
You
that.
sipping your tea in your decenter whiteness mug.
Yeah. And
I had these decenter whiteness mugs that I gave out to like people that I sent early copies of the book to, like people I admire in the space. I think I sent one to Dr. E. Dr. E, I think I sent one to you, but I sent it to you, Kina, and a lot of other folks.
Yeah, so you might need to sell those, sell the mugs to be like, just in case.
I am so not capitalist minded, because there's so many things people are like, girl, you need to be, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should be like on that. I'm so not a like, how are you a business owner that's not like,
This is why we friends.
I gotta tap into my capitalism bag, girl. I was just giving them out.
At Beyonce energy.
Right, that exactly. I need to tap into.
Hey,
Oh, hey, Tony.
Yeah.
Our good sis, Beyonce.
In summary, I think we gave people lots of things to think about.
Yes.
In order to protect Black people at work, decenter whiteness, divest from whiteness, decolonize your life, lean into specificity. Make sure that you replace those the values and norms of whiteness and supremacy culture with indigenous ancestral norms. Mm-hmm. Be very thoughtful about looking at the data and looking at the data with nuanced eyes. All right, recognizing you can't lump all folks into one category. And then lastly, making those policies to protect the most impacted. You missed it, but the replay
is let the replays come in.
And then also just make sure that you ask Black folks what they actually want and need.
Yeah, 100%. And listen to the most marginalized Black folks, right? You have to, if you're following folks like Kina, if you're following and going to Kina's learnings, you understand things like fat phobia and colorism and texturism. And, like if you're only listening to certain Black folks, if you're only listening to the light-skinned Black folks, that's still an issue. If you're only listening to the thin Black folks, that's an issue. If you're only listening to, so like, it's also important
to cis het Black folks, right? Issue.
Yeah.
If you're only to those who are able-bodied, that's an issue.
Yeah.
And
so understand.
I'm gonna kind of get on my little soapbox for a second. I don't do it a lot, but you said something about we all have to shed something, right? To bring inspiration for all. And that's something I'm always mindful of, because at some point, if I'm doing my work right, if we're doing our work right, believe it or not, there's going to be times where I have to step aside because a Black trans woman is going to be center stage and needs to be. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's how I feel. That's how I'm approaching it. I approach it like, at some point, Kina, you might need to be called upon less and less and less, because as more people get from outside of the margins, their voice needs to be center stage. And that's okay with it, because, you know, and I'm going to be okay with that because I'm about this life for real. Right? But a lot of people don't know how to step aside because they're more concerned about amplification than liberation.
Girl, that's a word. They are more concerned with amplification than liberation. When a lot of folks get a taste of the limelight, it tastes too good to give up. And it's like, I want to be in the center. I want to be here. And it's like, you know, I think a good example is a lot of white folks are called out for co-opting Blackness on TikTok, right? And I know there's one person in particular you've called out because he had a TED Talk about anti-racism. I forget his name.
Jolly Ginger Wild.
Yeah, and it's like,
so I called him out, but I made content about the white guy in the t-shirt named Eric.
Yes, and I remember that. Like, you are so used to being in the center that, like, there's a saying that, like, when you're so used to being prioritized, or you're so used to being at the center, when you're deprioritized or decentered, it feels like oppression. But it's like you've literally been at the forefront, and if you are about it, and if you are really committed to this work, and you know that at some point you're going to have to be decentered, right? Because there's always someone who's more marginalized than you. There's always somebody who may, you know, like, we all have to, like, recognize that. Like, even me, I'm like, okay, I'm a Black woman. There's probably an older Black woman who's disabled, who's also non-binary, who's like, you know, there's all of these things, and I have to not be so concerned about centering myself. But like you say, and I quote you in the book, whiteness always seeks to center itself. And even if you're not a white person, that desire to center yourself and be at the forefront is that internalized whiteness, honestly.
Part of our intergenerational trauma from living through these violent systems.
Absolutely.
Community, because the individual is the most impactful thing in society, then we have to figure out, we feel like, if the spotlight's not on me, then how am I going to get the things that I need?
Right? But we have to, we all have to shed, right? If you're doing, I feel like in order to be liberated, we have to let things go. And it's not about acquiring things and acquisition and this and that. And like, and I see too many people in this anti-oppression DEI space who enjoy the warmth of the limelight more than they actually want liberation. They want themselves to be at the center. But it's like, do you really, if you were, not to get into a soapbox, but I'm not a huge fan of Shaun King at all. And I've had conversations with Black folks about why I think Shaun King is problematic. A lot of Black women have told us Shaun King is problematic. People don't want to listen to Black women. But on top of that, with everything happening with Israel and Palestine, Shaun King's voice has been centered. He's not Palestinian. Why are we centering his voice? Move aside and center, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're just reposting stuff that Palestinian journalists have already posted. You trying to prioritize yourself and be at the center shows me that you're more concerned with the limelight than liberation. And so I think that folks are not ready to have that conversation, because a lot of folks love Shaun King and love, I'm not going to name another one, but there's another one that I'm kind of like,
now we get into the messy part of the
right? So all the folks that stayed till the end, they get a treat, because we're just being messy now.
Do we want to get messy at the end? I feel like no,
because it has to be said. I feel like folks are more committed to the limelight than liberation. Folks want to be at the center. They want their voice to be prioritized. And so a lot of people I look at funny in the light, because I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, I think you enjoy the attention you get from posturing like you care about liberation and like you care about anti-racism versus you actually wanting to liberate people. Same with Robin DiAngelo and all of these people, right? If you're so committed to liberating Black folks, why do you constantly create this, why do you write books and don't center Black voices? Why do you?
People say, stop writing. Stop writing.
And she's like, okay, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to write another book, not include any Black voices.
She got a Black friend who's like, Robin, we need another.
Right?
Robin, how else are people going to know about racism if you don't tell them?
Right.
But since we're being messy, I'm about to be so messy on LinkedIn tomorrow. You already know. And
I'm ready.
Like,
on the leap year, right? But it's like, yeah, I feel like folks are, and that's a whole nother conversation. Not to plug my article, but I think I did a good. Sometimes I write stuff and I'm like, that's okay. I think I did a good job writing this. I wrote this article on how anti-Blackness shows up in the DEI space, and I think it's a good article. So y'all should go and read it. But I think it's so true because there's a lot of folks who like the attention that they get from being a DEI star, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like talking about oppression and I have 100,000 followers because I'm talking about oppression. It's like, is that what we want to
really have to talk to a Black woman because I'm friends with a Black woman and then I listened to her and then I wrote this article. So like, it's not even, we're basically the same at this point. I had a conversation today. I talked to Janice and I just downloaded everything she said and then put it.
And now I'm getting attention. I'm getting paid. I'm getting all of these things. And so I think we just have to be more discerning with who we give our time and our effort and our energy to. Because like, we should not be centering folks like Shaun King. Like there's enough receipts from Black women that we should not be centering someone like Shaun King.
Okay. Right. Max Milton Kelly, where can you find the article? If you go to Google or any web search, just type in Janice and Forbes.
Yeah, if you don't even have to type my name. If you just put anti-Blackness in DEI Forbes, it'll pop up. Because I could be wrong. I don't think anyone else is writing about anti-Blackness in DEI for Forbes.
No, I mean, some of those same women that we're talking about might be writing about it. You just never know. They like to co-op. Okay, listen, to wrap up the part of the evening, what I think we're really trying to say, but I don't speak for Black women. So what I'm really trying to say, I don't want to speak for Janice, is nobody should ever be on the street corner preaching something they don't embody and practice. Right?
How do you check if somebody is actually about that life? Because you talk about this a lot. How do you know that people practice what they preach? Because it's easy to repost. What we're seeing now is like folks just reposting TikToks from anti-racism people. They're gaining followings, and it's like, wow, this person is so progressive.
I mean, all of the ways I could respond right now are rated XXX.
Okay, I need to. You'll text it.
You know what I'm saying? Like all of the examples I can give in my head right now are just really, really bad ones. But it's like, how do you know what anyone is about, like the life that they say? You know what I'm saying? Like people be like, "Hey, girl, I could do XXX," but like, you got to look at people's actions.
Yeah.
Check receipts.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, if you gotta brag about it, you probably don't got it.
That's very true. No, but even like if you have to declare yourself an ally and say, I got Black friends, I got a Black wife.
Yeah, like every other post you got is like, according to my Black friend Dion.
Like,
because listen, here's the thing: if you got Black friends, I know, like, it's gonna be evident that you're doing community with Black people. You don't gotta, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you know? I think you look for the receipts and don't just look for the things that are on the surface.
Yeah.
Do you like, for example, look at how many, if you look at how, well, that's not a good way to quantify that. Cause I was about to say, look at how many Black people or creators somebody follows, but they could just be following Black folks to steal their shit.
Yeah.
So that's probably not right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there are people who follow you and follow Tony and follow me just because they want to steal the content. So I don't know, but I'm just saying, it will show up in the language they use. It will show up in the language they don't use, right? Like one of them Karens that I'm about to get to at LinkedIn is a parent that you're not embodying in practice because of some of the silly shit you do across the internet. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like the white dude, Eric, with the white t-shirts. I had told you way before I called him out that, listen, he don't listen to black women. And sure enough, he confirmed it in my DMs when he had the nerve to fix his face and, yeah, I'm telling all the business, and was like, I feel like you don't respect me, sir, comma. You out here speaking for black people all the time, and your
The audacity.
the caucasity.
Where are the, so it's like, where are the receipts? I really like to see, like, not to say that, like, maybe you might wake up one day and you have an epiphany. Some people do change, right? So I don't want to say, like, because you had a questionable past, you can't transform your way of thinking or evolve as a person. But I think if you're posturing like you're about a certain life, I want to see the receipts,
Yeah.
right? If you bragging about this, there's going to be other people that can corroborate your
Yeah.
story and say, you know what, Keena said this, and I can confirm.
The streets know. The
the
streets
streets
gonna know.
the streets be talking, so the streets know, right? And so, like,
I was just thinking this. People do evolve, but I check my credentials. It's been a long time since anyone ever heard me cite Robin DeFangelo. In fact, I don't even think I done it on the internet.
yeah,
You get what I'm saying? So
yeah.
running back is what I'm saying.
Did you
Like
put
running back,
that up?
it was me or you.
Oh, I was like, oh, you put the,
You
no, but that's what you said. You probably don't remember, but a long time ago we were talking about somebody specific who lives in New Orleans, right? And you be in, New Orleans,
mm-hmm.
and you said this person, I don't know where they be at. I don't see them in the streets. I don't see, what did they, they say they about this life, where they be at, so, like, you said it, and I never forgot that when you said that, right? Because it's like, if you really about a certain life, you're gonna have receipts. And I also, like you said, I like to look at who people are in community with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when I see people, non-black people in community with a lot of black women, I'm like, I feel like this person is safe. They can be trusted. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
right? But it's like someone like Candace Owens, right? Not to keep throwing her name in, but she probably is not in community. Maybe she is, because her hair started to get, you know. Yeah, let me stop. But
Look, now it's just getting worse and worse. That's what I'm saying. Every time you see somebody having a live conversation and they with a white person,
right, it's just like who are you in community? Because certain things, like, when I see certain people and then I see their behaviors, and then I look at who you're partnered with or who you're in community with, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That tracks. That makes sense. So I think, like, it's important that if you really embody this work, or if you're striving to embody, this work, or if you are, how do I say this? If you're committed to equity, justice, and liberation, right? I think we're all committed to this journey. It's important to hold yourself accountable and look at the people you're in community with, right? And so I think that tells me a lot about a person. You are the people that you surround yourself with. And you can't tell me you're committed to justice and liberation if you're surrounded by, oh, my uncle's racist, or my this, or my that, or my that. And it goes back to that thing where I feel like decentering and divesting from whiteness means you have to shed, and means you will be shedding. It could be shedding people, it could be shedding, and losing opportunities. I feel like it requires, like, remember in, like, elementary school when we watched, like, the worm transform, or, like, metamorphosize, or, like, lose its skin.
yeah.
I think it was a worm or like a snake or something we saw in school. It's like that I feel like is like you're constantly going to be shedding your old self. And so I really try to interrogate people, because I've made the mistake in the past where I assume because someone knows the language of liberation that they're really about that life.
Politics.
Yeah.
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 I almost wish that the last 15 minutes of this we could cut off of the replay, because people are gonna be like, damn, they got so messy at the end.
It definitely did. Somebody said, and it had me rolling. It might have been, oh no, Charlotte Charlotte said, now begins the snatch and edges portion of the live.
Yeah.
That's true, Charlotte. But now we're gonna get back to.
Yeah. So as always, I appreciate you. I give Black women the last word. I want to remind people that all types of people, Black folks, it doesn't matter who you are. If you don't have a deep understanding of what anti-Blackness is, I encourage you to sign up for the workshop. And as always, I want to give you the last word to close this out, Jay.
So I think it's important for you to share. The workshop is this Saturday on Eventbrite, but you can find it on Eventbrite. But what do they search on Eventbrite, and what time is it?
Saturday at 11 CST. The link is in my bio, but in Eventbrite, I think all you have to do is type in understanding anti-Blackness.
Okay. Boom. And it's there. So yeah, I think I don't have any final words. Thank y'all for joining. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching the replay, we appreciate y'all. But I think, yeah, I mean,
and if you somebody who's on LinkedIn, you can check out Janice and I tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow at 12 Central, 1 Eastern. Kina and I always do every month a LinkedIn live show. We're going to take a little bit of a hiatus because we do it every month, and I think we're
gonna
burnt out and tired.
Go quarterly for a little bit.
Yeah, but if you're on LinkedIn, you can connect with Kina and I. Our names are on. Does the Divesting from Whiteness platform have your LinkedIn name up?
I don't.
I don't think so. So okay, so never mind. You can just connect with me because I don't want to put your,
all my business.
Right. I'm just putting all you. Right. So you could just connect with me. It's just Janice Gassamasari on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to watch the live, watch the replay, and also you can on Kina's page you can watch this replay.
All right. Boo, love you.
Love you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Thanks y'all for joining.